So, Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, namaskar to everyone. So, I am Mahmudul Hassan Dhabuk, PhD scholar, Department of English, Kolkata University, and Assistant General Secretary of Bengali Academia for Social Empowerment. So, before we start our formal lecture, I want to give a very precise introduction about BASE. So, Bengali Academia for Social Empowerment, BASE is a developmental organization registered as a trust by a collective of academicians, scholars, professionals, and other like-minded people working for community and social development. You all know that BASE is a is an academic body, and it has been conducting lots of lecture, organizing seminar, and doing some social work when a situation actually demands. So today's lecture is resistance through pop culture, comparative analysis of Indian and American graphics novel. And today's speaker is Dr. Pritesh Chakraborty. And I hope today's lecture is going very fascinating, extremely fabulous and meaningful and even purposeful and quite focused. So I request Tanya Farbin, who is a PhD scholar in the Department of Geography, to introduce today's speaker. So Tanya is also our base member. So Tanya, over to you. Please introduce
Thank
today's
you,
speaker.
Hashanda. Good evening to all. Today, our guest of speaker is Dr. Pritesh Chakraborty. Dr. Pritesh Chakraborty is presently working as an assistant professor of English at Acharya Sukumar Mahavidyalaya, West Bengal. He is former Fulbright foreign language teaching assistant at New York University from 2018 to 2019. He has obtained his PhD from West Bengal State University. He has obtained his MPhil degree from Calcutta University. He is researching on superhero comic books of Batman and Indian comics. He is interested in creative writing and has published a long story in Kindle Direct Publishing. He has published several articles in national and international journals and has chapter in privilege to have chapters in books and has attended a few seminars and conferences both in India and abroad. We are privileged to having sir with us. With this few words, I request you, please go ahead with your lecture. Over to you, sir. Thank you. Sir, please unmute yourself.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Thank
Thank you very much for that lengthy introduction. I hardly deserve all that introductions, but without anything else, I will go into the presentation. And okay, so let me have a minute so that I can start the presentation. Okay, so is my slide visible on your screen?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay, great. So as I was introduced, the topic was also introduced. The topic is resistance through pop culture, and I will analyze a few Indian and American graphic novels to see if it happens, or what is the scope of resistance through pop culture. Now, as this picture suggests, this is a gladiatorial game in ancient Rome. And as we all by now know, that these games and other forms of entertainment were introduced whenever the emperor thought that people were getting a little uh, fidgety about unemployment, about hunger, about they were some kind of mutiny, some kind of revolution was brewing. The Roman government, the Roman emperor, and the officials called for a annual gladiatorial game where people would be made to see fights, and they will bring out their aggression, they will bring out their frustration on the stands, and they will forget about their daily problems against the kingdom and the government. So popular culture initially was generated from higher quarters, and popular culture, popular games, popular music, popular circuses, um, amusement parks, all of these things were invented or organized to channelize the growing frustration or discontent among the masses into more entertaining, and sometimes even the masses had to pay for these entertainment games and stuff. So even actually pop was there much before the industrial revolution began, and the purpose of the same was to keep the growing intellectual dissent among people in check. Um, so let me know if the slides don't change, because sometimes it happens. I hope we can see the same slide where this gladiator is looking up at the crowd. Next, so the main question is, why or how is pop culture conducive to resistance ideology? I mean, resistance also has its own ideology. And what is there in pop culture that makes it a fertile ground for the crop of resistance? Now, nobody, and when I say nobody, do read that the people who are powerful do not care about the popular culture, because the people who are in power do not care about the popular culture because it's popular, because it's not elite, because it's not something that has something or anything serious about it. This takes us to the very basic definition of popular culture given by John Story. So John Story says that popular culture is the culture which is the leftover after the higher culture or the elite culture or even the folk culture is over. So popular culture is the bottom feeder culture of cultures. So that's why, I mean, we don't care about the people who lie, or the stuff or the concepts which lie at the bottommost corner of our collective consciousness or our culture. Since they lie low, since they are like the bottom feeders, since they are at the lowest of all quarters and are only used for very shallow entertainment, they can stay under the radar. They are too shallow to be a threat. I mean, that was a view about popular culture, not anymore, because now we know that even some aspects of popular culture have come under radar and have come under the cancel culture or the ban culture or the governmental interference into popular cultural shows and movies and stuff like that. But basically it stays under radar. It knows that it cannot raise its head too high. It cannot show that it is intellectual. It cannot say something very smart. If it does, then it comes under the radar. And also, popular culture throughout the ages have adapted the devices of allusion, have adapted the devices of innuendo and euphemism to use as their satirical tools to satirize whatever or whoever is in the dominant position. Now, they could be understood as Shakespearean fools who were once licensed to offend. But as we find out in India or elsewhere, even fools are gullitioned now. Because if you talk about two Indias, if you say things which are too offensive, even if you are saying it in a light vein, if you are using a humorous way to express yourself, even then you can be licensed. But they can function as, to some extent, as Shakespearean fools who could offend you. Then, as the name suggests, they are popular, and hence they reach the populace, the masses, easily. Say, because again, John's story says that they are of inferior quality, or they are apparently of inferior quality, and whatever is of inferior quality should be cheap. And if they are cheap, then most of the people are going to buy them. So once you go to a cinema, which is open to all before COVID, you can go to a movie theater and you can enjoy a cheap song. You can enjoy a cheap popular cultural movie. You can watch an action sequence, and you can learn nothing in these 2 to 3 hours. But after COVID, even that is restricted in some places. But you have your mobile phone now, which is now the ultimate space for the proliferation of popular culture. And now you have the Instagram reels, and once you had the TikTok, and you can go live on Facebook, where you do not have to pay separately for them, but you just have to recharge your mobile or steal your neighbor's Wi-Fi password to enjoy those things, and they reach the populace. And that is why, if popular cultural artifacts, if popular cultural texts can be embedded with resistance ideology, they will reach their target audience rather easily. Now, this is an example that I thought would wake up people from getting asleep, because I have been talking for some time now, and this might help them come awake from their sleep. And at the end of this little song, we can realize why I am playing this. I hope it plays and it goes for like 2 to 3 minutes, but I will try to cut it short whenever I think the purpose of this song is done. I hope you can hear the song, everyone. Just let me, anyone know, Hassan, could you let me know if
Song is not being heard, Dr. Pritesh.
Hassan, is the song audible and visible?
No, sir, it is not audible.
No, it's not audible.
Oh, it's not audible. I don't know. Well, can you see the song playing?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know. I embedded the video, but I think you would recall this video and this scene from this popular movie called Houseful. And you can hum along with the scene as Malaika Arora gyrates to this particular song, which actually says that छोड़ छाड़ के अपने सलीम की गली अनारकली डिस्को चली. So she is, of course, Anarkali, and she is the modern Anarkali wearing modern clothes, and she is leaving Salim to go to a disco. And further into the song, we can hear that she is complaining, Anarkali is complaining that Akbar cemented her into a wall as her crime was to love the prince. And she calls Akbar Sitamgar. Sitamgar is an oppressor, because Anarkali was a nautch girl. Anarkali was, as far as the status goes, Anarkali was much inferior to that of Salim, the prince. So this song, which is a popular cultural song, and it was quite popular some 4 or 5 years ago, carried within it some elements of this resistance, where the modern Anarkalis do not care about Salim anymore. And this assumes more significance when you realize that Salim and Anarkali love story was an iconic love story like Laila Majnu or Heer Ranjha. But this modern Anarkali does not care two hoots about Salim or his father, and she is going to disco to let off some steam. Now, this is a symptom. This is just an example. This is just one ways in which some dominant ideology, some dominant patriarchal ideology in this case, is debunked by using the tools of popular culture. This is a popular song. This is also known as an item number, which accrues more popularity to itself. And it was unfortunate that you couldn't hear the audio, and something must go wrong. Otherwise, it's not a presentation. So now, my main thirst is comics, like comics being one of the many popular cultural manifestations. How can comics act as resistance? Can they even act as resistance? So the first thing about comics is that, like all other forms of popular culture, comics also threaten the status quo. And Joseph Wittek, who wrote a book called Comics as History in 1989, writes that the power fantasies embodied in Superman and Batman do finally threaten the comfortable bourgeois worldview. So the power fantasies embodied in Superman and Batman are a threat to the comfortable bourgeois worldview. The comfortable bourgeois worldview can have its equivalent in the Bangali Bhadralok outlook. Like the Bangali Bhadralok does not do this or does not do that. We are very familiar with the popular meme of Uttam Kumar and his father, where they were fighting over whether Uttam Kumar should turn into a singer or whether he should take care of the jute mills. Now, while singing has thrived as an alternate profession, jute mills have, well, not thrived. So was that a prophecy within popular cultural text of movies? And also talking about movies, movies themselves were something that was considered to be a bad influence on the youth, and the people belonging to our grandfather's age weren't very happy if they heard that people are going to the movies, especially if the women are going, and more especially if the women are going alone. So there was something both in Superman, Batman, and other comic book superheroes which did threaten the comfortable worldview of the bourgeoisie population of the Western world. Now, comics are powerful. What makes them powerful? Lurid, Wittek says again that the lurid and antisocial, the emphasis is mine, antisocial elements of comic book fantasies with an unprecedented graphic power. So the power lies in the graphic depiction of whatever was being depicted. Now, I will go forward a number of slides just to point out the graphic element, the graphic power of this particular medium. Bear with me. Okay, so this is this is the cover page of an underground comics, and this is Yellow Dog number 17. If you have not already figured out what is happening on the cover page, a devil-like creature, and the devil is smoking a cigar, is relieving himself on a landscape. And it appears that the snug American way of life is being formed from the behinds of the devil. So on one hand, we can understand that the modern and the snug and the bourgeois and the capitalist way of life, as the chimneys suggest, and they are already engulfing the sun. The sun is looking very concernedly at the smoke coming out of the chimneys. This way of life is the way of life of the devil, or even the devil is not living this life. Actually, the devil is shitting out the way of life that America had embraced so snugly. And at this point in time, India and many people in India think that this is the lifestyle that they should aspire to. But Robert Crumb, the producers, the writers of Yellow Dog, thought otherwise, and they thought that it is the devil that spawned the American lifestyle. And if not the devil, but a very dark history did spawn the American lifestyle, or America as a nation itself, as we will see earlier. And let's go back to the slide. So that is why they are powerful. I mean, if you were not nauseated, if you were not affected by the graphic representation of the things that you saw on that particular slide, then of course the power does not work. But for me, but for a number of people who wanted this Yellow Dog edition to be banned, just like they wanted books like Rainbow by D.H. Lawrence, or books by James Joyce like Ulysses to be banned. They also wanted this book to be banned because in the very first cover page there was power, there was graphic power that depicted things in a very yellow light. The yellow is the yellow of the excreta that is being pointed out here. Now, the power of the graphic was also could also be found in the Comics Code Fiasco of 1954, when the Comics Association and the Comics Magazine Association wanted to establish a comics code after a governor's hearing in USA, where they wanted self-regulation to be imposed on the comic books. And then from 1954 to 2017, Wonder Woman was retracted as a women empowerment ambassador by the UN. 2 months ago, Wonder Woman was selected to be the ambassador of women empowerment by the UN. And then within 2 months of the protest, Wonder Woman was retracted. And the point of the protest was that Wonder Woman wore too little clothes. Wonder Woman was too manly. Wonder Woman was too violent to be taken up as a woman empowerment ambassador. So people were definitely scared of the violence that they saw in the other. They were afraid of the violence that they do to the other when Wonder Woman was inflicting that violence on the bad guy. So this was a classic case of projection. Number 3, they incite rebellion. So Wittek says again, latent heritage in comic books of rebellion against the dominant culture. So there is something inside the comic books that incite rebellion, and that too against the dominant culture. As an example, I would like to point out that, say, for example, these superheroes, Batman and Superman and Spider-Man, they rescue people when the police or even the army fails to, to control a particular situation. And they also take care of the crime and the criminals in the society. They fight off the bad guys where the police and the other administrative machinery fails. So basically, the comic books in their non-statement say that you need one efficient person in the middle of it in order to take care of things, rather than a whole party or parties of or a parliament full of people who cannot make up their mind against a particular policy or for a particular policy, and they fight against themselves rather than fighting against the criminal. So basically, the comic books kind of suggest that there should be like one person which is against the dominant culture of democracy. But there are other non-democratic or pro-democratic issues in comic books as well. Whereas traditional literature is basically produced by a single author, comic books, in order to be produced, needs a team, a writer, an artist, a penciler, an inker, a flatter, an editor, and then they need to be sold. But in general, traditional literature, novels, poetry, short stories, drama are usually penned by single authors. So while one aspect of democracy is debunked in the comic books, another aspect of another aspect of democracy is embedded in the comic books itself. And that's why they can work as a double-edged sword of resistance, because they can incite democratic ideas very subtly, though within places which are not very democratic, where an anarchist or where a autocrat is ruling on his own and not listening to the people. And on the other hand, a false democracy perpetuated by false politicians can be called out. Now, much of the action of a comic book story takes place between, and this is author's emphasis, the panels, in the gutters, and this emphasis is mine. Now, when we hear the term gutters, we can also visualize the gutters, which are the sewers. And the sewers or the gutters can be considered to be the subliminal space where the subalterns dwell. It is the forced eater of our garbage. And it is the place where revolution often occurs. It is the place where, I mean, if you associate, if the gutters are a metaphor for the people at the lowest of all levels, marginalized, forced into moving from their places, then we can understand that this place is the last point where revolution, where resistance, where fight back can actually take place. And incidentally, they were not gutters, but they were gutter-like structures in Vietnam through which the Viet Minh fought against the American, the French, and the other imperialist forces, and ultimately they won. Gutters could also be understood as the trenches where you can get your warriors into, and then you can start to fight against whoever you want to fight. Now, this talk is boring, and many listeners might have already started doodling if you have a pen and paper. Now, doodling itself is an escape with which many of us are familiar when we are faced with a boring lecture of a teacher like me. So you could be honest, and at the end of the lecture, you might show what doodles you had produced. I would be very flattered if somebody tried to draw me. So see, this within even this particular talk, within this particular lecture, there is opportunity for us to resist whatever I am saying, and only if you resist, then only will this lecture be an escape. You can ask me, no, this does not happen, and I resist whatever you are saying because you're just a person and you are in a position of power because you are speaking and we are on mute. We won't be able to even speak to you because the organizers won't let us speak, and so on and so forth. Now, the fourth aspect of comics which can work for resistance is that they are the in-betweens. Now, in between genders, in between works of art, in between people living on the margins, are the most dispossessed, are the most marginalized people of all, and nobody cares about them. When Art Spiegelman won the Pulitzer Prize in 1994, the Pulitzer committee was at a loss to put the book in a particular category. They couldn't put it in the novel section, they couldn't put it in the journal section, journalism section, prose section, they couldn't put it in other sections, and they were at a loss, and then they just didn't use any categories. So you see, comic book in itself breaks these boundaries and harbors energies that are in between themselves. So comic books become a space. A comic book becomes an arena where opposite forces and opposing and paradoxical forces can mingle together, just like the words and the pictures can, and they can bring out something very latent, which is going on in the society. So, and then one thing that I find very interesting about comic books and why they could be helpful in any kind of resistance movement is that they are prelingual and postlingual as well. What do I mean by prelingual and postlingual? Say I was seeing this comic book. First, I'll talk about the comic book. And Hassan, do remind me of the time that I have. I do not want to take up too much time. If I am like overstepping my time limits, do remind me, and I'll like stop and go into something else. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Prelingual, I was, yeah, okay, thank you. So prelingual, as I was saying that I was watching, I was reading this comic book, which was written in French. And as an experiment, I tried to read it from the cover to cover, and I tried to take notes as to what was going on. It was a comic book about Captain America and Batman. So it was a Marvel DC crossover. And when I gave it up for an examination by a person who could read French, that person said that, well, you found out what was going on in the comic books, you understood what was happening, you wrote almost 80% of whatever was going on, even in the dialogues, only because you had these images, you had these pictures that was going on in the comic book. And so this is prelingual. I mean, when we were like babies, we did not have language, and we could not communicate with language as much as we could communicate with show and tell, which Scott McCloud also says that the first steps of signification from our end begins by showing and telling. We show and tell stuff. And postlingual is something that, say, suppose I speak in a language which you do not understand. I speak in a tongue which is not familiar with you. But if I draw something, then I think you would still understand. For example, if somebody is thirsty and he or she is in a place where his language is not understood, some of you have already started making a gesture like this or this, and people would understand that this person wants water. So pictures and pictures in sequence, to be more specific, are very powerful tools of expression. And the following slides will, I hope, go a long way in establishing as to why comic books can be used as tools of resistance. Now, history in comics. So this book that I took up is by Gord Hill, and the name of the book is 500 Years of Resistance. And in this book, if you ever read it, you should read it. It's also available for free. You can download it from the net. In this book, Gord Hill tries to represent the way in which the Native Americans were captured, killed, subjugated by the Western world. And in this picture, if you can read the narrative section, without even reading the narrative section, you can understand that these people had superior weapons They are shooting from bows. They are shooting from guns. They are using dogs. And these poor people have just their spears, and some people even don't have spears. So if you now read the narrative panel, that against European weapons, cannons, muskets, crossbows, and swords, armored horses, dogs, indigenous warriors were poorly equipped, armed mostly with clubs and spears. So this was always a kind of a uneven fight between the two cultures. And now this image is taken from Wittek's book, but this is actually drawn by Jack Jackson. And the name of this story is Knits Make Lice. Knits means the the parasites that live in our hair. I mean, thicker hair, not my lesser hair. So this is again a show. This is again a depiction of how the Americans systematically wiped out the Native American population. It registers a protest by showing, and without any qualms, without any veil of decency, as to how the settler colonists dismembered, killed, raped, dishonored the native people. If you can come to the fourth panel on your from the top, this person is dishonoring even a dead person. This person is taking out the penis of a dead Native American warrior, and he's saying that he's going to make a tobacco pouch with it. I mean, this is, if you were angry when our heroes from army were dismembered, were disrespected by our neighboring nation's army, then this is also the same thing. So there is an adage that why does history repeat itself? Because we do not learn from history from the first time. And in the next two images, in the next two panels, a woman is raped, and they are taking turns to rape her, and then they are killing the person, the lady, by their rifle butts. So this depiction is itself a protest. This depiction shows what or how genteel or how gentlemanly were the behavior of the settler colonies against the Native Americans. Nothing is not this. This is not unrelated, and the way things happen in our country is not very different either. If we are angry, if we are sad, if we are terrified of what happened to the Native Americans some 300 years ago, we should also be concerned about what is happening right now in our country. And this page has been taken from River of Stories by Arijit Sen, 1994. And this story, this River of Stories, talks about the Narmada Bachao Andolan. And this shows that the attitude of the forest department or the people in power against or about the tribal people living on the margins of the society. And this officer says, these damned tribals always choose the most inaccessible places for their settlements. Now, who is responsible for that? Did the tribals really choose to live in the most inaccessible places? Did they have a choice? Didn't urbanization, didn't capitalism, didn't we forced them to go away from fertile lands and into reservations, as in the case of Native Americans, or in the case of India, to the reserved forests? And again, reserved forests was something that was invented by the Britishers, because they already had this idea when they were fighting against the Native Americans in America. So the officer continues, I tell you, Datta, no development can happen here till the road is made and good communication set up. Of course, the driver agrees. The very existence of people living in such a primitive way is an obstacle for modernizing the country. Well, of course it is, because if a part of our country remains primitive and a part gets modernized, then there will be further imbalances. But what is the solution to this particular issue? Now, again, in this slide, you can see that over the years they managed to drive the Adivasis into the hilly and forested tracts and settle themselves on the more fertile valleys and plains. I suppose it's similar to what white settlers did in Americas and Australia. So the land changes, the color changes, but the oppression doesn't change. And the tribals never chose themselves to exile themselves into the forested tracts or the hilly areas. It were the Britishers, it were the aristocrats, it were the people living in the center of power who were responsible for that. So somebody naively asks what happened when the British came. So the British were not an advantage. The British were not a blessing, but rather a curse continued. And the same process continued, but the significant thing that the British administration did was to introduce the concept of reserved forest, as I was talking over, and they justified that how now the forests could be taken away from the tribals as well in the name of development. Now, some part of the speech bubble is missing, and I'm going to read it out. So in the second panel, we can see that people in the bus are talking and people are washing and doing their stuff in the river. And now our government, aided by these international banks, is planning to flood some of their last remaining villages out of existence. And the context is Narmada Dam. The Narmada Dam was going to be built, and it was supposed to flood a huge area where the tribals lived. So do you see the building of the dam as a part of a historical process of displacement of tribal communities? So for our benefit, for the benefit of the people who live in the center, the margins are often either obliterated, erased, forgotten, or in this case, flooded. Definitely, but it's not as if the Adivasis have not resisted all this. Now, this is important. Even here, there is a point, even here, there is a hope of resistance. And legends of folk heroes, including like Birsa Munda and other Santalis, who fought till their last breath against the British engagement, against the British imperialism, have given us hope that this could be done. And legends of folk heroes who fought to retain their independence abound, and so on and so forth. And the same is happening against the dam as well. So there is a mood of discontentment growing among the people, and there is a tribal consciousness also coming up against this kind of dams to be built. And though I will not go into the intricacies of why and how a certain car manufacturing industry did not come up where it was supposed to come up, it had something to do with your land being used for some purpose for which it is not meant to. However, we all know the result of this resistance, the result of this struggle, that it neither produced cars, neither is it producing any crop. So, and this image is evocative. This image is valuable and useful for our topic, that we oppose, and these are the people who are speaking. This is not just one person who is speaking, but the narrator is taking a picture of this resistant population who are saying that we oppose all those who in the name of development commit crimes against humanity by tearing apart this earth for their own short-term gains. So there is resistance, and the important fact is that this resistance is being depicted in a graphic novel. This resistance is being depicted in a medium that was not censored, that was not under the radar of censorship way back in 1994. And to those who know less about the kind of censorship that goes on in or on Indian comics, we can say that even now the government's eyes have not turned really penetratively into the pages of the comic books that India is producing at this point in time. Now, let's move to another aspect of popular culture for a little bit. I mean, this is related with another comic book, another graphic novel that I am going to speak about. This movie, Jaibhim. I was skeptical before watching what am I going to see in this particular movie. What I saw did tell me the process in which justice is denied to the people who live on the margins. They are denied land, they are denied opportunities, they are denied even their caste certificates, they are denied justice in the courts. It was a miracle that this person, that this lady, that this pregnant lady could even reach, could even speak for justice. And this very this very feature, that a person is considered to have won when the person could speak, could ask for justice. And that is something that was a huge takeaway for me from this movie. And movie is, as we already know, falls under the ambit of popular culture, and kudos to the director or Amazon or the actors who agreed to do something without having any item numbers, without having any romantic angle between the lawyer and the other people in the movie, or without the lawyer trying to throw punches at the bad guys. Now, my concern is the graphic novel Bimayana, which also projects, which also shows a resistance to the caste culture, to the caste ostracizing, to the caste marginalization rampant still in some parts of India. And this novel does provide us with facts in a very colorful light about the life of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar and his struggles, and how he managed to carve out at least a niche, carved out something significant, carved out a victory for the Dalits, the untouchables, and how they fought and what were their techniques of fighting. In fact, the technique of fighting is depicted in the graphic novel itself. If you can see these lines, these are panel borders, which effectively denies the Western system of paneling. And the speech bubbles are in the form of some kind of a peacock, or the another speech bubble is I think it's a tail of a scorpion, which are very common animals, which are very common objects in the Indian subcontinent, and how they talk about this this oppression, and what were the significant points at which this resistance comes out. Now, if you look at this picture for a while, this image shows as to how even after the victory that they could use a particular public pond, a public lake, tank. Some people, as depicted by this image on the right, this image depicts a Brahmin, perhaps, because the ear might look like an alien ear, but it's the sacred thread that is wrapped around the person's ear, and that is so very beautifully done. That is so very genius of the artists, the Vayams. And so this person is defecating. This person is you know. Is relieving himself in the water, and so is the other person, and then somebody is throwing trash in the water, and then there is a elephant in the water, but the elephant represents maybe wild animals who were allowed to drink from the tank, but not the so-called untouchables, or the Harijans, as Gandhi used to call them, or the Dalits. But this animal, this elephant, is also evocative of a political symbol which came much later than Ambedkar was active, and also that this person, this image, is hogging the central location of the pond. So when the high courts and when the Supreme Courts passed orders saying that the lake is for everybody and nobody should practice untouchability or caste politics or casteism, then these people who were not happy with this judgment, they destroyed the tank by putting their offals inside it. Then let's come to the resistance part. This image is taken from Avatar, the very super hit movie, and these images evoke the Native Americans fight back against the settler colonies. So it was not that the Britishers or the Americans had it very easy. They were like attacked for like 200 years, and as the comic, as the graphic novel 500 years of resistance shows, that it was a struggle for 500 years, which is still going on. So on June 8, 1876, this elite 7th Cavalry was defeated by a Native American person, led by a Native American person called Crazy Horse. And there were other cases of resistance as well, which our history book doesn't talk about. I mean, their history book doesn't talk about. Because if we know that we had the power to resist, even if we did not have guns and tanks, then while now we have guns, tanks, and even degrees, like educational degrees to fight back, we can fight back against any kind of oppression. We can resist any kind of autocracy. So, but then when they saw that they could not win by force alone, these people adapted deceitful means. And this is the image which is associated with the recently concluded Thanksgiving thing in America on 25th November, where instead of thanking, instead of being grateful to the Native Americans for the hospitality they showed to the settlers, they infected the Native American population with smallpox, and they distributed blankets laced with perhaps the first instance of biowar against the hapless Native Americans. They have never seen smallpox before. This was like COVID from hell, and most of their population was wiped out, and it was done systematically. But victory comes, I mean, after resistance. And what is the goal of resistance? What is the ultimate aim of resistance? That is victory. And this image is evocative of a victory by the native people of a community, of a tribe, against the government of Ecuador in as recent as 2020, because they were trying to take away their lands. They were trying to build a dam maybe, but these people resisted. They went to the courts, they went everywhere, they went to the media, and ultimately the government had to back out of that particular project, and these people won. Similarly, this quarrel between McGirt and the state of Oklahoma led to a number of legal precedents. This led to a number of victories for the native people, because the state of Oklahoma said that everything, like even the reserved areas where the tribals lived, will fall under their jurisdiction. But the native people wanted this particular person who was a criminal to be judged by their laws, and that led to a legal battle between the state of Oklahoma and somebody called McGirt, and ultimately the native people won. And these were the legal precedents, and these were the orders that were passed by the Senate, and so they won a significant battle as late as 2021. Now, coming to the Indian scene, as I was saying, that in India, the censorship has not yet been very penetrative into the texts that Indian comics produce. Now, this comic book named Vote for Parmanu tells about or depicts that Gandhi is talking some really very strong stuff, very strong for children who might be reading it. And this book was published in 2000, and I was 16 or 17 back then, and I thought I was young back then, and there were other readers of comic books who were younger than I was. And when we read this particular line, that राजनीतिक पार्टियों के रूप में माफिया गैंग पनप रहे हैं. Political parties are nothing but another form of mafia gangs, out for power, out for blood. And police निकम्मी हो गई है. Police is useless, and हर तरफ भ्रष्टाचार है. When we read it, we had goosebumps. When we read it, we realized, yes, what we are seeing in our society is being reflected truly in these colorful pages. Instead of just fighting some alien from Mars or from somewhere else, Parmanu, who is a superhero, has now to fight with police apathy, has now to fight with corruption, has now to fight with political parties, which are nothing but another face of mafia gangs, many of them. Now, the same thing is reiterated by another superhero of Raj Comics, and this image is not very clear, sorry for that, but this person in the purple suit is Doga. And if you can see, he is hitting a policeman, and he is saying the same thing. Nakam nakara police, जिसकी नाक के नीचे चंपी उस्ताद जैसे बदबूदार कीड़े गिजबिजाते हैं, मगर पुलिस की नाक को इस बदबू का एहसास नहीं होता. So he is saying that the police is useless. The police does not do anything, and criminals like somebody called Champi Ustad is prospering right under the noses of the police, and the police does not even do anything about them. So this, if this does not hardwire, if this image did not make us think that, oh yeah, that's right. I mean, even in an escapist form, even in the escapist literature, when we read the same things that we are escaping from, then we have nowhere to escape but to gear up to fight in some way, whichever way possible, against whatever is happening outside. So even in this escapist literature, which has been this allegation against the comic books for very long, that this is just an escapist literature, this is for children. And yeah, I mean, if children are reading it, then they would realize that this is what is really happening in their society. Now, there is another form of resistance, and this time it is done by the women. All Parmanu, the superhero, does is to take away the chaku, and when the man is outnumbered by the two women and he does not have any murdering weapon, then the women says that chaku se dadagiri dikha raha tha, ab dikha apni mardangni. That you were threatening us with a knife. Now, when you do not have the knife, let us see who is the real boss, who is the real man. So this is, I mean, we have already gone through this image, so I will not talk about it, but we can definitely talk about this image. And Wittek says that faced in their daily lives with the twin terrors of nuclear anxiety and the Vietnam War, the comics creators appropriated the horror genre to political and social satire. So here is Uncle Sam, an image of Uncle Sam, and the image that is coming out of his bottom is that of Nixon, and he was responsible for this problem in the Vietnam War, and he was also responsible for the problem in the Vietnam War. And to show this image, and to and this image went round, and this is a comic book cover. It proves that there is a possibility that satire can be appropriated into any genre of the comic books, let alone the superhero genre. Now, there are other sorts of resistance as well, and this is a graphic image, and I will ask people to use their discretion to have a look at it. This is Lost Girls, and this is a graphic novel, and this is a kind of reworking of the Alice in Wonderland trope, the Alice in Wonderland novel. So this depicts, as the image is evocative in itself, if you look at the image carefully, you would find that there is a lesbian relationship between the so-called lost girls, and they are looking back into the real world where the kids were playing with their stuff. And the kids look back, some are in an awe, some are interested, some are unperturbed. Someone is unperturbed because this girl on the left, on the other side of the book cover, is just carefully, like nonchalantly brushing her hair. And they are seeing another world, they are seeing another aspect. And this also builds up a resistance to the taboo culture of lesbianism and homophobia. And of course, this comic, this graphic novel is pretty famous in our country now. It is Kari. It's an image from Kari, and Kari also depicts a homosexual relationship between two women, Kari and her girlfriend, and it was published in 2008. So even here, even in these novels, these two novels, Lost Girls and Kari, there is a resistance to the dominant view of heterosexuality or normativity or performativity of the gender roles, which the comic books or the graphic novels definitely challenge, if not break. So that will be all from my end, and thank you for listening to my nonsense for so long. And if you have any questions and queries, you can send them to this email ID. You can also contact me over whatever media you think you want to contact me with. So with that, I'll end the sharing, and I'll go back to the main window. Okay, so I am open for questions, but I think I have overshot my mark. It's like more than 1 hour now, so I can be kicked out, no problem. Sorry, I didn't notice the 10 minutes. So Hassan, is it okay if they have questions, or is it time? It's more than enough.
Yes, thank you, sir. So I request to audience, if you have any question, please ask.
Okay, Siddharth Bose has raised a hand. You can unmute and speak. You can say whatever you want to say.
Thank you, Dr. Chakraborty. It was a nice presentation and the depiction and how exactly you have, connected from the 500 years back till date, and especially connecting with the mainstream comics of India. I would like to, know more about it. Like when we are talking about the prejudice behind comics, because I'm also a research scholar, as you know, we had interacted a couple of times. So I'm also pursuing my PhD in Indian comics industry. And when we are talking about, as an industry, this overall business has never been taken any serious. It has not been considered as a serious work or serious business. Whosoever you will ask, what do you do? They will first of all be overshy to say that yes, I do read comics or I am in the comics business. So if you would like to, share some of your thoughts about it.
So, if is your question about how to tackle this prejudice against comics publications?
No, my question is, what do you think as a, as I do take you as one of the known people who understand this business or who understand this world really nicely. So, what is your thought behind it?
Okay, so I think if we are talking about publication, if you are talking about, since your research is on publication, as far as I understand, my thoughts are simple. We need to adapt to the technology. We need to adapt to the burning issues or themes of the society that are affecting us. I mean, how many COVID comics are there? I mean, we are in the second year now, and I just read this comic on COVID from Raj Comics, and something from Vayu Comics, Vayu Man, or something like that from the government. But I want this platform to be used as a springboard for for rising a cry for relevant comics, for comics that touch our daily lives, that do not just take us on a fantasy tour where we are enmeshed in some mythology of Nagraj, but how does Nagraj tackle pollution? I think that will be something that will give both a critical attention and the popular attention to the comic books, and that might increase the base of the readers. That's what I think about this whole issue about comics publication and comics relevance today.
Thank you, Dr. Chakraborty. I would like to draw your attention on the GST man as well. The book has been published by the government of India, which is in a comic format, and it talks about how exactly the common man can understand about the GST. It is totally into the comical format.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever get a chance to hands-on, do lay your eyes and give it a thought.
Yeah,
Thank you
sure.
very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, I can see another question from Bishodev Rajbongshi. And he says that, sir, would you mention sources of graphic representation that talk about Dalit motherhood? That I cannot say anything out of memory, but I think there is a mainstream comic arc. I was reading the other day where a transgender person has been represented, and the question of motherhood has been raised there. If we can consider the transgender person as also belonging to the Dalit community, then I think I can mention that comic book, which is known as Amanush, and it is in the story arc of a character called Anthony, which is in the Raj Comics publication. Other than that, I need to be more specific about comic graphic representations that do talk about Dalit motherhood, and that's a very good pointer. This is what I was talking about. We should be more inclusive, but I cannot tell something out of my memory where this kind of motherhood has been talked about. You can even go to Adi Parva, because there is something about being a mother and also being a warrior. So yeah, that's my question to you, Vishwadev. Vishwadev, yes. I think Hassan, they have had enough. Okay, Seema Ahmed has raised her hand. Seema, you
Yes,
can.
thank you, Dr. Pritesh. Uh, I'm not an avid reader of comic books. Still, I'm sharing my thoughts. You mentioned about River of Stories, then graphic novel, Bimayana, and all these things. But I think that why Bengal is lagging behind in producing or using comic as a tool of representing or as a form of resistance in matters of different issues, whether it is caste issue or Islamophobia or oppression of women, because Bengal is considered as a hub of culture and so creative. But still, whether it be in a comic or in cinema also, we can see a kind of conscious, they're consciously just avoiding taking these forms as a form of resistance. So just can you share your thoughts on this?
Yes, the answer is very simple. I mean, Seema, I and some other colleagues, we were trying to come up with this graphic anthology, which is based on Sundarbans. And you know what? We do not have money to publish it. So the answer is very simple. If there are people who want to talk about issues that nobody wants to talk about, they need to have money to publish or at least self-publish. We have already been turned down by a number of publishers who says that they are not interested whether we talk about the Sundarbans or some other issues. They want something else. The other thing about Bengal, I don't think Bengal is lagging behind, because Arijit Sen himself is a Bengali. I mean, maybe he is not in Bengal right now, but he did not write about Bengal. But Arijit Sen, and then I remember the first name, Sharnath. Was it Dashgupta, or was it some other surname? Corridor is a very important graphic intervention on burning issues. Then we have this side, that side, and then Vishwajyoti Ghosh curated a collection of short stories, short graphic stories on partition, called This Side, That Side. So I don't think Bengal is lagging behind, but the fact is true that there is least publicity on these graphic novels. But if you are interested in looking into these comic books, looking into these graphic novels, you can definitely check them out. You can, and I think these platforms are essential for us to tell you about the existence of Bengali produced, if not on Bengal, but Bengali produced comic books. Sometimes they are also on Bengali, on issues of Bengal, like this side, that side is on the Naxalbari movement. So there are things that are being produced, and as we speak, there have been some developments in the Indian comic book scene, where the West, where Bengalis, where Kolkata is also trying to churn out comics and graphics. But the problem remains the first one, that is the money. If you have money, you can publish, but because the big publishers are not going to take risk of investing a lakh after your idea if nobody is going to buy it because of the lack of marketing. So that's there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Peter.
So if no one else has any question, because I think they have had enough of me chattering endlessly about comics and graphic novels. Hassan, over to you.
Uh, so thank you very much for this very fascinating lecture. So since there is no question, uh, I go to formal vote of thanks part. So first of all, my sincere gratitude to Dr. Pritesh Chakraborty. Dr. Chakraborty is also my teacher. So thank you for this lecture. Secondly, I thank all the EC member and all the active member of base. They are working wonderful for this organization. And last, not the least, I thank all the audience. They are the active support of our organization. So thank you very much. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye bye.
Okay, thank you.